I finally feel useful again. That is what a 62-year-old woman named Evelyn told me, tears welling in her eyes, just 3 months after marrying a man she had known for less than a year. She was an intelligent woman, a retired school principal, a woman who had raised 3 successful children on her own after her first husband passed away. She had a full life, a garden she loved, and a book club that met every Tuesday. But then she met Robert. Robert was charming, 70, and seemed a bit lonely. When she said, "I finally feel useful again," she wasn't talking about intellectual usefulness or emotional connection. She was talking about the fact that she was now cooking 3 meals a day, managing his high blood pressure medication, and organizing his chaotic finances. Her friends saw a woman who had turned into an unpaid servant. Evelyn saw herself as a savior. But within 2 years, Evelyn wasn't useful anymore. She was exhausted, isolated from her children who couldn't stand to watch her decline, and suffering from severe stress-induced heart problems. She had walked into a trap that looked like love but felt like labor. In my years of clinical practice, specializing in the psychology of women and the dynamics of late-life relationships, I have seen this story play out with heartbreaking frequency. We are often told that love has no age limit, that it is never too late to find your soulmate. And while that is technically true, the landscape of marriage after 50, 60, or 70 is radically different from marriage in your 20s. The stakes are higher, the baggage is heavier, and the predators, whether they are malicious individuals or simply men looking for a soft place to land at your expense, are much more common than you might think. This is not a video to tell you to stay alone forever. It is a video to save your life, your sanity, and your legacy. We are going to discuss the 7 critical things you must know, the 7 deadly traps, before you sign a marriage license later in life. These are things that most relationship coaches won't tell you because they are too busy selling you the fantasy of twilight romance. I am here to give you the clinical reality. Before we dive into these 7 critical points, I need you to do something for yourself and for other women who might be walking into these traps blindly. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you help signal to the algorithm that women want truth, not just fairy tales, and you help this message reach the woman who needs to hear it today before she makes a mistake she cannot undo. And I want you to stay with me until the very end of this discussion, because after we go through the 7 dangers, I am going to give you a set of dynastic questions, litmus test, that will reveal in less than 5 minutes if the relationship you are considering is a blessing or a curse. The danger here is the confusion of being needed with being loved. Many women of your generation were raised with the deep-seated belief that your value lies in your service to others. When you have been single for a while, or perhaps widowed, that muscle of service hasn't been exercised. Let's begin with the first thing you must know. The first danger that Evelyn fell into. I call this the nurse with a purse syndrome. When you marry later in life, particularly if you are a woman marrying a man of the same age or older, you are statistically entering a caregiving dynamic. Men, biologically and sociologically, often age differently than women. They often neglect their social circles and their health management until a woman enters the picture to fix it. The danger arises when women, driven by a romantic desire for oneness, agree to merge finances without a forensic understanding of the partner's situation. I call this the financial fog. You see the man paying for dinner, you see his nice car, and you assume he is secure. But you do not see the debt, the alimony payments to 2 ex-wives, the adult children he is still supporting, or the bad investments. When a man comes along who needs you to remind him of his appointments, who needs you to fix his diet, who needs you to help him navigate his relationship with his estranged kids, triggers a dopamine rush. You feel purposeful. But here is the reality. You are not being recruited as a partner. You are being recruited as a care manager. I had a client, let's call her Janice. Janice was 58, fit, active, and loved to travel. She married a man of 65 who seemed active too. But he hid the extent of his chronic conditions. Within 6 months, Janice wasn't traveling to Italy. She was driving to dialysis. She wasn't planning romantic dinners. She was managing a strict renal diet. She loved him, yes, but she realized too late that he had been looking for a nurse who would sleep in the same bed. She sacrificed her own healthy years to manage his decline. The psychological trap is that you feel guilty for resenting it. You think, but I promised in sickness and in health. However, that vow assumes a lifetime of building together, not entering a relationship specifically to manage the decline. Concrete rule: never marry a health plan. If he cannot manage his own physical and emotional well-being before the marriage, he will not do it after, and you will become his facility. The second thing you must know is the trap of financial fusion versus autonomy. In a first marriage, usually starting in your 20s, you build wealth together. You start with nothing and grow together. In a later life marriage, you are merging to fully formed empires, no matter how small or large those empires are. You have your assets, your retirement, your home, your habits. He has his. The danger arises when women, driven by a romantic desire for oneness, agree to merge finances without a forensic understanding of the partner's situation. I call this the financial fog. You see the man paying for dinner, you see his nice car, and you assume he is secure. But you do not see the debt, the alimony payments to 2 ex-wives, the adult children he is still supporting, or the bad investments. I remember a case involving a woman named Sarah. Sarah was financially prudent. She owned her condo outright and had a modest but solid retirement fund. She met a man who was flashy, charismatic, and generous. He suggested they sell both their places and buy a dream home together. It sounded romantic. A fresh start. Sarah sold her sanctuary. They bought the big house. 6 months later, the IRS came knocking for his back taxes. Because her name was now on the joint assets, her security was compromised. Even worse, he had a sense of entitlement to her money, because, in his mind, we are married, we share. Sarah lost not just her money, but her sense of safety. She went from a secure, independent woman to someone living in anxiety, checking the mailbox with dread every day. Concrete rule: financial transparency is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Keep your premarital assets separate, utilize a trust, and never, ever sell your safe haven to fund a joint fantasy without a legal contract. The third danger is what I call the last chance panic. This is a purely psychological trap, and it is one of the most lethal. It is the internalized belief that because you are 60 or older, this man standing in front of you is the last opportunity you will ever have for romance. This scarcity mindset forces you to overlook red flags that you would have spotted from a mile away when you were 40. When you operate from scarcity, you bargain. You say, well, he drinks a little too much, but at least he's here. Or, he's a bit controlling and doesn't like my friends. But I don't want to eat dinner alone for the rest of my life. This bargaining is a betrayal of the self. I worked with a woman named Alina, a vibrant artist in her late 60s. She met a man who was intellectually beneath her, emotionally dry, and frankly, quite boring. But he was stable. He was a body in the room. Alina told me, I just don't want to be the only one without a partner at my granddaughter's wedding. The fear of the social stigma of being allandrove her into a marriage that suffocated her spirit. She stopped painting because he thought it was messy. She stopped laughing because he didn't get her jokes. She traded her vibrant solitude for a grey, suffocating companionship. The loneliness you feel inside a wrong marriage is 10 times heavier than the solitude you feel when you are single. Concrete rule: solitude is infinitely better than servitude. Never marry to avoid being alone, only marry because the person adds a vibrant new dimension to a life that is already full. Now, we must discuss the 4th danger, which is often the most painful because it involves your bloodline. The Brady Bunch delusion. There is a fantasy that when you remarry, you are creating a big, happy, blended family. But when you remarry later in life, you are not blending little children who can grow up together. You are forcing together fully formed adults, your children and his children, who have their own loyalties, their own inheritance anxieties, and their own judgments. The danger here is the adult-child veto and the war for loyalty. Often, a woman will remarry and assume her children will be happy for her. Mum is happy, so we are happy, right? Wrong. Adult children often view a new stepfather as a threat to their inheritance or an intruder in the family history. If the new husband is difficult, or if he tries to assert authority over your adult children or grandchildren, it creates a rupture. I saw a family destroyed by this. Margaret, a grandmother of 4, married a man who didn't like noise. He didn't like sticky fingers on his furniture. Slowly, Margaret stopped hosting Sunday dinners because it stressed him out. She stopped having the grandkids for sleepovers. Her adult daughter, feeling pushed aside and sensing her mother's anxiety, pulled back. Margaret chose the man, thinking her daughter would understand. She didn't. The daughter stopped visiting. Margaret ended up with a clean house, a grumpy husband, and a broken heart, isolated from the very lineage that gave her life meaning. You must understand that you are not just marrying a man. You are asking your tribe to accept a stranger. Concrete rule: your children and your grandchildren are your permanent legacy. A new partner must fit into the existing family ecosystem seamlessly, or he does not fit at all. The 5th danger is subtle, creeping in like a fog. It is the retro role reversion. This happens to highly successful, modern women. You may have been a CEO, a manager, a woman who ran her own life for decades. But when you enter a marriage dynamic, especially with a man of a certain generation, there is a powerful gravitational pull back to the gender roles of the 1970s or even the 1950s. It starts small. He sits at the head of the table. He drives the car every time. He expects dinner to be discussed and planned by you. He manages the investments while you manage the household. Even if you don't want this, the muscle memory of your first marriage, or the role modeled by your parents, kicks in. You find yourself asking for permission. Is it okay if I go out with the girls tonight? Why are you asking? You are a 65-year-old autonomous woman. I treated a woman named Linda, a retired attorney. Fierce, sharp, took no nonsense. She remarried a retired military man. Within a year, Linda was essentially a housewife. She was rushing home to ensure dinner was on the table at 18 o'clock hours. She was dressing differently because he preferred softer clothes. She had shrunk. She told me, "I don't know how this happened. I feel like I'm playing a character in a play I didn't write." The danger is the loss of the identity you fought 30 years to build. You didn't divorce, work, raise kids, and survive menopause just to become a subordinate in your own home again. Concrete rule: don't shrink to fit a role you outgrew 20 years ago. Establish a dynamic of equal partnership and autonomy from the very first date. The 6th danger is one that is rarely spoken about because it is taboo. The touch starvation trap. Many women in their 60s and beyond have been without intimate touch for years, perhaps decades. This is a state of physiological deprivation. We all need touch. It regulates our nervous system. I have seen brilliant women marry men they had nothing in common with. Men who were objectively bad partners, simply because the sexual connection was reawakened. It clouds judgment. You think, this must be love because I feel so alive. No, that is biology. That is your body reacting to stimulus. It is valid, it is beautiful, but it is not a foundation for a legal contract that binds your assets and your future. You can have intimacy without marriage. You can have companionship without signing over your deed. Do not confuse the relief of touch with the security of partnership. Concrete rule. Chemistry is not character. Enjoy the renaissance of your body, but do not let your hormones sign legal documents. And finally, the seventh danger. This is the one that destroys legacies. It is the inheritance heist. It sounds dramatic, but it is a legal reality. When you remarry, depending on the laws of your state or country, your new spouse often becomes your primary heir by default, unless strict estate planning is in place. I saw the most tragic case of this with a client's mother. Let's call her Patricia. Patricia had a home and savings intended for her two daughters who had struggled financially. She married a man, let's call him Jim, later in life. Jim had his own kids. Patricia, trusting and in love, changed her will to leave everything to Jim, with the verbal understanding, the gentleman's agreement, that when Jim died, he would pass Patricia's share to her daughters. Patricia died 5 years later. Jim grieved, yes, but 2 years after that, Jim remarried. Or perhaps he just got closer to his own kids. When Jim died, his will left everything including all of Patricia's life savings and her family home to his children. Patricia's daughters got zero. Nothing. Their mother's legacy was effectively stolen by a stepfather and handed to strangers. This happens every single day. It is not cynical to protect your children, it is your duty. Concrete rule: protect your bloodline before you protect his feelings. Use trusts and prenuptial agreements to ensure your assets go exactly where you intend, regardless of who survives whom. These are the 7 things. The 7 traps. And if you look closely, they all point to a broader, escalating risk. It isn't just about money or time. It is about your health. We know from psychosomatic medicine that women in stressful marriages suffer higher rates of heart disease, autoimmune flare-ups, and slower recovery from illness compared to single women or women in supportive partnerships. I call it the cortisol marriage. If you are walking on eggshells, if you are managing his moods, if you are worrying about his spending, your body is marinating in stress hormones. At your age, your health is your most precious capital. You cannot afford to spend it on a relationship that drains you. Furthermore, consider the emotional legacy. How do you want to be remembered by your children and friends? As the woman who lived her final chapters with dignity, joy, and autonomy, or as the woman who slowly disappeared into the shadow of a demanding man? So, what is the alternative? Am I saying you must be a nun? Absolutely not. The healthy alternative is to redefine what relationship means in the modern age. You can love without merging. There is a growing movement called living apart together lot. This is where you have a committed, monogamous, loving partner, but you keep your own homes. You sleep over, you travel together, you support each other, but you do not merge finances, and you do not merge households. You keep your sanctuary. You keep your routine. You see each other when you are at your best, not when you are cranky and need to do laundry. This model preserves the romance because you never take each other for granted. It protects your assets. It protects your relationship with your children because there is no evil stepfather taking over the house. It allows you to have love without servitude. It allows you to be a partner, not a nurse. Now, as I promised, I want to give you a self-diagnostic test. I want you to close your eyes for a moment, if you can, and answer these questions honestly. Listen to your body's reaction. Does it tighten, or does it relax? Question 1. When you see his name pop up on your phone, is your first micro-reaction a smile of excitement, or a tiny clench of anxiety, wondering what he needs now? Question 2. Are you hiding any of his behaviors from your children or your best friends because you know they would disapprove? Secrecy is the shadow of shame. Question 3. Since being with him, has your world gotten bigger? More friends, more activities, more joy? Or has it gotten smaller, staying in more, seeing fewer people, doing only what he likes? Question 4. If he developed a serious illness tomorrow that required full-time care, would you feel honored to care for him, or trapped? Be honest. Question 5. Do you feel you can be fully, 100% yourself, opinions and all, or are you editing yourself to keep the peace? If you felt a tightening in your chest, or if you realized you are making yourself smaller to fit into his life, you are already in the danger zone. Ladies, love is a beautiful thing. But at this stage of life, wisdom is more beautiful. You have earned your peace. You have earned your assets. You have earned your autonomy. Do not trade a lifetime of achievement for a few years of companionship that comes with a heavy price tag. True love, mature love, adds to your life. It does not subtract from it. It respects your history, it honors your children, and it cherishes your independence. If you found this video helpful, if it sparked a realization, please share it with a friend who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below, telling me which of the 7 points resonated most with you. I read them all. And remember to subscribe, because in the next video, we are going to talk about how to set boundaries that actually work with adult children. Stay wise, stay strong, and protect your peace.